My guess is at some point in your life, you've lived on either side of the equation in a hospital waiting room or a surgical pre-op room. Either you've been somebody waiting to have surgery, or you've been there accompanying, waiting with somebody who you care about. And so you probably know that sort of dance of togetherness and separation that happens on the day before a surgical procedure, right? You'll both show up together, and then they'll check in the person who's having surgery. So you part for a little bit, and then they go back and get them all processed, maybe start the IV and give them that classy hospital gown, and then you can go back and see them again before pre-op in some sort of holding room with curtains all around, and you get to nervously sort of twitch and not have any water to drink and that kind of thing. And then at some point, they'll take the person who's having surgery back into the operating room. And then you wait, if you're the person waiting, or if you're the one having surgery, you wait for a while until the next thing you know, you wake up in some recovery room, and there the person is who was waiting for you the whole time. And even though for a while you've been in separate spaces, you know the goal of that whole day's adventure was to get to the point where the person having surgery has gotten through the surgery, the other person's waiting is done, and you hope that the surgery does whatever it's supposed to do to help heal the person, right? That whatever has to be cut out or repaired or stitched is all taken care of. The goal of the surgery, of course, is to help the person who's sick to be better so that they can be stronger or healed, or whatever is making them sick will be removed and taken care of, and for both of you to be together. And in that space of waiting throughout the day, whether it's nervously in the pre-op room or in a recovery waiting for anesthesia to wear off, there's the story you tell each other of, we're going to be apart for a while, and then we'll be brought back together, and in the end, this will allow more life, more functionality, more strength than we had before, right? You were sick or weak going in, and you'll be healed afterwards, right? If you have a torn meniscus or a knee that needs to be replaced or whatever, the goal is afterwards you'll be stronger, you'll be more flexible, you'll be able to walk and move and do the things that you want to be able to do, which is why the waiting is supposed to be worth it, and why the waiting is never really completely separate. You're basically in two different rooms in the hospital, each waiting and living through the same experience. If you've been there before, you can at least picture it. Maybe you get the feel for what it's like as Jesus tries to prepare his disciples for the change that's about to happen. As on his last night with them, he helps get them ready for both the cross and also for how things will change even on the other side of resurrection. That Jesus will indeed rise from the dead, and he will see them again. And there are all those stories we hear every year at Easter time with the appearances of Jesus in the upper room behind locked doors, or walking on the road to Emmaus, or there even at the garden. And yet Jesus knows that even those are for a brief time, and then things will change again. Jesus will finally ascend to heaven, and he'll be present with us, but in a different kind of way. The goal, of course, is for all to be made well. The goal is at big picture and new creation, and God makes all things new, that we'll all be there with Jesus in his presence. But also there will come a point when the followers of Jesus are carrying on without Jesus bodily in the room anymore. We'll talk about that Jesus can be with us by the Spirit, but we should also admit it's different. It feels different than a human body in the room that you can listen to and talk to, and who can multiply loaves and fishes, that kind of thing. So in the 14th chapter of John, we're going to hear these words this coming Sunday. Jesus has this really difficult challenge of being the one who's going to go through the hard stuff. He's the one who's going to be put to death. Jesus is the one whose body's going to be laid in a tomb. Jesus is the one who will go through all that suffering, but he's concerned about his followers and how scary this is going to be for them. And so he tries to warn them, not so much warn, I guess, but prepare them, right? Don't let your hearts be troubled, he says. You believe in God, go ahead, you can trust in me as well. And he reminds them, I've told you all along, I'm going to prepare a place for you, right? I'm going, eventually, I'm ultimately going to be where God is, in the full presence of God, and my goal is for you to be there too. So he says that line many of us know, in my Father's house are many dwelling places. If it weren't so, what I've told you, that I'm going to prepare a place for you. And the whole point of me going to prepare a place for you is so that we can be together, and there will be fullness of life. The disciples are confused and fearful, but Jesus is basically walking them through what it's like if you're in the surgery waiting room, right? The person who's assuring the other person, I know it's going to be scary for a while. I know this is new, and anything new seems scary to us, but here's how we're going to get through it. For a while, we'll be apart. we'll be back together, and ultimately the big picture is for all to be made well. And in the meantime, Jesus adds something that is kind of surprising, kind of startling. In addition to Jesus saying that in the big picture, he's going to gather us so that we will be where God is and where he is, he also says, in the meantime, you all are going to keep doing the kinds of things you saw me do. In fact, you're going to do even greater things than I did. Well, that sounds preposterous, right? We good, modest Lutherans, no, nobody can do greater than Jesus. He's Jesus after all. He's the Son of God. And yet, in a sense, the movement of Jesus, people filled by the Spirit, continues to do amazing things that, in a sense, transcend the scope of what earthly Jesus in his handful of years in Galilee and Judea were able to accomplish, right? Maybe you could say Jesus, feeds 5,000 people on a hillside one day, but feeding ministries have sprung up through the followers of Jesus over the centuries that have certainly fed millions. We've been able to help end slavery and cure disease and do all sorts of wonderful good things in the name of Jesus as Jesus followers, empowered by the same Spirit. So even in a sense, Jesus continues to inspire, to motivate, to empower us to do things even greater and grander than what a handful of years Jesus could accomplish in Palestine, in Judea, and Galilee. So here we are, people who on the one hand are waiting for that day of Jesus' final coming, of Jesus setting all things right, of us being in the very presence of God forever. And at the same time, it's not a sitting nervously and twiddling our thumbs kind of waiting. I suppose that's the difference between John 14 and our kind of waiting. Or rather, that in a hospital room, right? In a hospital, basically all you can do is sit and wait and read old magazines. But our calling is, while we're promised, in the big picture, all will be put right, we'll be in Jesus' presence and God's presence. But in the meantime, we also trust Jesus can be with us and leading us, working through us to do amazing things right where we are. Both things are true at the same time. I suppose that is one of the things you discover in the hospital as well, right? It's scary, and at the same time it's hopeful. You're nervous, and at the same time ready to get through it. Jesus meets us in that tension of being anxious and hopeful, of being scared and comforted all at the same time. And that's what we're going to take a look at this coming Sunday as we explore John 14. Join us then. See you Sunday.